Lord of the Rings has some of the best designed swords in all of cinema history. However, in today's episode, which is the third installment, we may have found the worst. So let's get started. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Screen Tested. I am your host Tyrant. Now in today's episode we're going to be looking at more Lord of the Rings sword designs. You guys have really enjoyed the previous two episodes, so we're going to go for a third one. And if you guys enjoy this one, maybe we'll do another one. Now one thing I wanted to bring up, if this is your first time here on the channel, I highly recommend going to check out those other two episodes first. The reason why is because obviously we're looking at a lot more of the main character designs. So if there isn't a design in this one, it's probably in the previous two. So what we're going to be looking at is a little bit more side character ones, especially in today's episode. So getting started, jumping right into it, we have the Nazgul sword. This one is fascinating. It's very interesting to me. Now the first thing we should mention is in terms of the proportionality, in terms of the handle, the pommel, the crossguard, it all looks perfectly fine, as is really standard with Lord of the Rings. It has a diamond cross section, so that's the cross section of the blade. Very nice cross sections, one of my favorites. So this is an interesting sword simply because we obviously have that asymmetrical design up towards the top of the blade. Now this is one of those things where, is it part of the design, or is this, now this is just me throwing out some theories. Is this because maybe like the Nazgul have been using the swords for hundreds of years and they perhaps have a preference for one edge over the other, so they've worn back the edge so much? That's just me making something up, but I have no idea. But in terms of like a functional design, right? It essentially would function as a secondary edge. There isn't really any huge downsides to having kind of this asymmetrical design. In terms of the functionality of a sword, you would still be able to do primary strikes and reverse edge strikes. So functionally speaking, it would still work perfectly fine. The only thing that we may run into is maybe it would be a little bit unbalanced because one edge has less material on it than the other, but I think it would be negligible. You really wouldn't notice in actual practical use. There is an interesting part right down near the crossguard where it looks like it has maybe kind of like a half ricasso, and this kind of goes into maybe the half, because what you could do is you could finger the blade. I know that sounds bad, but it's essentially when you have a blade, you can put your finger over the crossguard as a technique, right? And it looks like you could probably do that with with the Nazgul design here. So we've got a lot of funky things going on, and like in terms of actual practical functionality, the blade would still function as a blade. It's a sharpened piece of steel. The cross section looks fine, the bevels look fine, so it's functional. Then when we get down to the crossguard is fascinating because it has these spikes and jagged bits. I don't know what we'll call them. Now they would function very interestingly to catch blade strikes. Obviously that's what we want with our crossguard. Obviously these ones here in particular, if we catch a blade, it's going to keep them from falling out because we have these little quillions here, right? Today's episode is sponsored by FlexiSpot. Yes, we have worked with FlexiSpot a couple of times in the past and I love working with them, and I also am happy because I get to give you guys kind of a long-term use update as well. So what we're talking about is the E7 Pro standing desk. Now I got my E7 Pro, I would say a little bit under a year ago at this point, and I use it multiple times per day, every single day. The video that you are currently watching is edited on my E7 Pro, and it has worked flawlessly. I have not had a single issue in the countless times that I have used it daily. Not a single stutter with the motors, not a single like power failure or whatever sort of malfunction you can have. It's just worked every single time flawlessly. So with that being said, I can wholeheartedly recommend it, especially if you're on the fence about picking up a standing desk. I thoroughly recommend standing desks as well, funnily enough. They're one of those things that will help you with your workflow. Obviously sitting for hours on end like I do when I'm editing videos sucks. So being able to switch between standing and sitting really helps with the comfort and my longevity when I'm trying to get all these episodes edited for you guys. Now there's a couple of key features we should talk about. First off, it has a 440-pound static weight limit. Yeah, it can handle a lot. Didn't really believe it, so I tested it when I first got it, and Yeah, I believe it, honestly. It has a height adjustable range between 25 to about 50 inches. So whatever your individual height requirements are, whether you're a short king or a tall boy, I'm sure it will be able to accommodate you. It has a dual motor construction, meaning that there is a separate motor in each one of the legs, of course. And then on top of that, it has a 15-year warranty with a 30-day risk-free return service. You also can kind of mix and match and build your own, and you can choose different, types of woods that you want for the actual tabletop. It's really, really cool, and it also obviously means that you get exactly what you want. So if you're on the fence about picking up a standing desk, check out the E7 Pro. Use my code YTE730 in the checkout. I really, really recommend it. Like I said, a little bit of a long-term use update. My desk has been fantastic. I absolutely am happy with it. Recommend it if it's something that you are interested in or in the market for. So with that being said, thank you FlexiSpot for sponsoring today's episode. Let's get back to it. This one essentially has serrated edges, so I do think that it would work rather effectively at stopping blades from sliding off your crossguard, which is a good thing. But the more interesting thing about it is when it comes to Mordschlag, you could actually do some real damage against this. Now, what is that? I just said some weird words there. You're probably like, what's going on? It's essentially when you hold the sword in reverse and you use it as a right-angled pick. It's really good against armor. And because this has such aggressive points on it, essentially it looks like it's got sharpened ends. It would be really, really deadly with that. The one issue I have with it, so it's good at Mordhau, but it's also bad at like getting stuck on things because we have these sharp points. But essentially the crossguard is functional and would actually be pretty devastating as a weapon. A crossguard is a defensive item, but at the same time, one of the good things about it is you can use it offensively as well. Then when we come down to the handle, it looks completely proportional, which I'm really happy about because obviously on the Witch King sword, it looked a little thin, maybe just to my eye. This one looks like it's the right thicknesses. It's also got a bunch of risers on the handle, something that I did very similarly on my Montante, so that's awesome, 100% legit. And then the pommel looks completely proportional to the blade, so the balance on this would be probably really, really good. So this is not only a functional design, the blade is a little wacky, right? That asymmetry is a bit strange, but in terms of functionality, it'd probably work perfectly fine. It just looks a bit weird. But in terms of functionality, we are 100% there. But it's also very aggressive. The design on this entire sword just seems so aggressive to me. The crossguard is aggressive, the handle's aggressive, the pommel's aggressive, the blade's aggressive. It's just a very aggressive design. It's design language, right? But in terms of this, absolutely awesome, absolutely love it. So next up, let's look at, these technically aren't swords, they are more daggers, but let's be really generous and say they're short swords if we want, right? And that is Tauriel's fighting daggers. Now I like these way more than Legolas's daggers, right? Now the biggest issue I had with Legolas's daggers is they just had no sort of contouring or, anything to stop your hand slipping onto the blade. It's just really not ideal for a lot of different, situations. These ones have absolutely gorgeously contoured handles. The pommels as well, like how this would fit in your hand would be incredibly comfortable. And then it flares out as we get to the blade. So there's literally no chance of your hand slipping onto the blade and cutting your fingers off. So I really, really like these. Then we come to the blade design themselves. It's very similar to like a sax, but not really, because it has a curve. It's not a flat edge, it's a curved blade. So these are very similar to the Rurouni Kenshin Sakabato, right? The reverse edge katana, which we've tested on the channel. And this is interesting because as a sword, I don't have too many problems with it. I personally prefer other things, but as a dagger, as like a little knife type design, that reverse edge type thing. I say reverse edge, that's more the Rurouni Kenshin thing. Anyway, in terms of the blade geometry with that slight curve, I think it's awesome. In terms of thrusting, these would be monstrous. The way that the blade, geometry and is shaped for the point, they will be incredibly, incredibly visceral in the thrust. Then when it comes to the slash and the chop, because we have the blades facing forward, right, rather than curving out, it means that when you put a lot of power into them, those ends, right, specifically, the last, let's say 30% of the blade, you're going to be putting a lot of force into it. And that's what we found with the reverse edge katana. So in terms of, fighting daggers, these are awesome. I actually really dig these. I like these way more than Legolas's, which is surprising. Which is surprising because, you know, obviously these are in The Hobbit and not the Lord of the Rings trilogy. If you're enjoying today's episode, you really should consider subscribing. Here on the channel, we do a whole bunch of cool shit, specifically like this, a fire sword. So if you like this sort of content, you should stick around. All right, a couple more left. Let's get on to what I would consider, I personally consider this to be the worst sword in the entire Lord of the Rings live action type deal, right? And the funny thing is, I don't think we ever see it in the films, not once. And that is Bard's sword. So obviously Bard in the Hobbit films, he's a bowman, so he doesn't even really use the sword. This is his official sword, like the official replica, right? This is not very good. So in terms of the blade, right? First off, it has a nice ricasso. It does seem to have a little bit more of a sweeping up guard, so it would probably function somewhat relatively fine, but it is quite thick, you know, it's quite thick on this dimension, so you're concentrating a lot of material there, which is not ideal. In terms of the blade, this looks to be a single-handed blade, but I can't really tell. But none of those things are what the problem is. So the blade itself probably would be functional, the guard probably would be functional. This handle looks round, which obviously is really not good for a sword. We want indexing, we've been over this before, and a lot of people say, you know, maybe it's just the images. This image just looks round, like it straight up looks round. But then we get to the pommel, and I guess I would call it like a languette, right? It's an extension from the pommel onto the handle. This is bad. Like, this is just, I don't really have any other words for it. We have a sweeping up pommel that has sharp points. So this would 100% dig into your hands or your wrist. This is just not good. There's just no positive or upside here. Then obviously, like I said before, having anything on your handle that you know, irritates your hands, no matter how small, can be really you know, a big detriment when you're actually using a blade. So having this extension onto the handle that looks like they have protruding points. These little transitions to the risers here, these have kind of some sharp burrs on them that haven't been removed, because these are like complex castings, right? However, these cast accents and risers irritated the out of my hand when I was in testing. Now, if I put on a gauntlet or a glove, this would be mitigated, but honestly, there is just too many burrs here. Like, you just need to take some sandpaper to this and refine this a little bit more to get it to feel a little nicer. This is just bad. Usually there's kind of, you know, a give and take, a pro and con. But when it comes to Bard's sword, when it comes to the pommel and this kind of extension onto the handle, they are just not good. They're just not good. So this is what I would actually crown as the worst sword in all of the Lord of the Rings stuff. There's just not really redeeming features for those two particular points. But that's going to be all for today, guys. I genuinely hope you enjoyed. Remember to like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below what you thought of today's episode. And if you want me to do another one of these, well, hopefully this episode does well like the other two. And if it does, I will. But that's all for now. Have a good one, guys.